This is not your typical.
All right, this is a performance I am super familiar with. I love Gene. I have his entire album on my Spotify playlist. Highly recommend, and here's why. Let's just get into it right here. He's so clean. This is, and by the way, this is not like a performance, then they dubbed over it. This is like Gene showed up. I think he did 2 takes, and this is the second one. And then, so they just kept this, which is insane. Like, try to keep like the click track going, the internal metronome going. He doesn't have an earpiece in. Like, he's just this on top of his internal metronome. It's crazy. Especially with sick like spills like those, man.
This is not your.
This is what kills me. This is what kills me. Every time I listen to beatboxers, I'm like, so it's enough to do like an arpeggio, like, right? Like, that's a really cool melody line. But some of these pitches he's hitting with, like, you know, his lips, right? He's like, it's crazy. Right? That's so sick.
This is not your typical shape so asymmetrical, riddled with imperfections, crying out for some affection, in the midst of all the ridicule, wishes for a miracle, there appears a shapeless, take my hand and you'll be weightless, I'll take you places that you never seen.
I talked a little bit about this with another beatboxer. When you're doing singing in beatboxing, you actually have to take a really specific approach. When in general, when recording percussion, especially they have a bunch of dynamic microphones around them. When you're recording percussion, if you don't appreciate and respect the dynamics, you're killing most of what makes percussion really cool. You don't get melody, you don't get harmony, you get time, and you get, you know, the levels, the different attacks, the different transients. And so because of that, your singing needs to kind of be at the same volume as your beatboxing, which is to say pretty quiet. Like none of that is really that loud in comparison to, say, for example, an opera, right? Where it's like, right? Big, loud. I can't go and follow that up with some more consonants, right? So the reason I bring this out,
I'll take you places that you never seen. Kaleidoscopic shapes that synchronize in harmony.
The reason I bring this up is because what Gene is doing might sound a little tense to certain people, but this is kind of intentional. I'm not going to get into why it sounds gritty right now, but like, I think a lot of people would look at this kind of straight tone, very, very quiet kind of singing and not understand that it's actually strictly necessary for this kind of a genre.
I'll introduce you to our family. And I'll be taking you home.
These effects, man, they're so sick.
Right? and I'll be taking you.
This is sick. This is so good.
And I'll be you. I'll be up. I'll be up. I'll be up.
So this is what I meant by like dynamics are really, really, really important. So he is changing meter, right? He's changing what beat gets the emphasis, which is keeping it super interesting and like, ooh, you like that? It's like, ooh, like, you know what I mean? That little change, the little thing he's doing. And he does it a lot, and all great beatboxers do. But the reason why that works so well is because the emphasis is being changed, right? It's not 1, 2, 3, 4. He's giving emphasis to different parts of the beat in different moments of the song. And so I'll try to point out like where the emphasis on the attack is. So we have that cough snare, right? So this is... So all that, the cough snare and the that I can't do, the kind of that inhale lip bass, that's where you're getting the heavy beats. And then he's got these little, you know, like hi-hat equivalents, right? Right? And it's like, he doesn't stay there too long. You know what I mean? It's actually really good just from a compositional point of view, right? It's not overly complicated what he's doing. It can't be, right? He's just one guy with a voice. And I'm amazed that anyone can do this much with it. So he has to make decisions to musically develop these different ideas. And so this is just so good to where he's he's very specific, right? From phrase to phrase, he's very specific, very intentional. And that's something we can all learn from as musicians, regardless of what the instrument is.
And I'll be you. I'll be up. I'll be
patient right there, nice.
I'll be up. And I'll be taking you.
Now pay attention again. Pay attention. Like, I think the first time anyone listens to this is like, oh my God, that's so fast. And it is, and that's cool. But listen to the different dynamics of each consonant and how it's beautiful. It's like, right? Like, it's like a drummer, like with the sick, like really cool, like intricate, like bell hits and all these really cool tricks. It's the same thing here.
And I'll be taking you.
See that, like that pop sound and how it sticks out? That's how he gives it structure. Otherwise, it's a bunch of mush, right? Like, give something that emphasis. I love that.
In the midst of all the ridicule, wishes for a miracle. There appears a shapeless. Take my hand and you'll be weightless. I'll introduce you to our family. Kaleidoscopic shapes that synchronize in harmony. I'll introduce you to our families. And I'll be taking you home.
The confidence to just be like, look, we're going back to the chorus and it's going to be unadored and it's going to be straight up and it's just going to come from here. You know, no tricks, not here. Nice. I want to talk about one thing again. Like, I think there's certain things that you kind of have to do when you're beatboxing. If you use plosive consonants or any consonants, like, so plosive would be P, B, right? Like anything that's the kick drum. But really any consonant where you build up air behind it. So, right? Anytime you do that, you're going to create, like, your body is going to assume that you're coughing or something akin to it. And so the false folds are like right here, they come in. And you can experience this right now. Just like go for the P, but don't let the air out. You're going to feel this come in. Now that's really, really, really significant, because if you do that and you try to sing, it will be very, very difficult. When the false folds are involved and you're putting air behind it, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to come out right. And most likely it's going to be flat. Pitch is almost always a matter of technique. Tone deafness is actually a real disability. It's actually a medical condition. It's not just like, oh, you're inexperienced with music, right? So the reason I bring this up is because he's kind of breaking into this quasi falsetto mix thing he's got going on. And there's a reason why he's doing that. Watch how on that snare, he's a little bit more gentle than he would have been previous. Right? Same with the kicks and all that. Because again, too much pressure buildup. Now, the second thing he's doing that's really, really cool is that he's flipping it up. What does flipping it up mean, right? Let's see if I do this. If I crack intentionally, if I basically reset my vocal folds, right? I'm going to go, right? So that was, right? By cracking, by bringing the folds apart again to kind of come in really soft, I'm making it much more quiet. I'm making it so that there's less breath, so that when I go to I'm not struggling too much, right? And so that's why it's really important, and that's why in beatboxing you almost never hear people going for like a belt or like really crazy stuff with the actual voice. So yeah, I mean, like there's a whole list of reasons why this is really technical singing, right? So that's just like, I don't know, I get excited about this stuff. I hope anyone finds that helpful. It's a little bit more technical than I usually get during these, but Gene is amazing. So Gene, amazing musician, right? Amazing. Oftentimes Codfish also gets a lot of credit, right? You know, it's not really a head-to-head, it's kind of head-to-head because it's kind of cool to just listen to them, you know, riff off of different things and have different ideas. But anyway, we're going to talk about Codfish's singing now.
What's doing? This is Codfish, and this is my wildcard video for the Grand Beatbox Battle 2018. You boys an old maid firebender.
So this thing is really cool. So this little lip thing that people do on the back of like something else that's going with the throat. So equivalent would be like Tibetan monks. It's so hard. As you're doing something with your throat, you basically have to form your lips in such a way that you're producing another pitch. It's overtone singing, right? So this same idea is everywhere in beatboxing.
Boys an old maid firebender.
It's subtle, but you can kind of hear it.
Is in the air. He's an old maid firebender. Not a second to spare. He's gonna fucking flame you out. He's gonna fucking flame you out. Old maid firebender.
I want to. This is the part of this that's really, really, really hard. I think most people would probably have to take this down a little bit. Usually, people with bigger voices are the ones we kind of look to when we're talking about a throat bass, like MTS, Reeps one. More of like Reeps is kind of like more of a baritone, but I don't want to get into voice classification because those are kind of stupid. But the reason I bring this up here is because I think a lot of people would try to bring throat bass up this high, which is not easy. Like at a certain point, it just kind of feels uncomfortable, right? But he's doing it up here. Like that's pretty high for throat bass. So it's worth pointing out that this is something that you would need a lot of practice to do, in the same way that higher notes in singing are something that you would need a lot of practice doing. You might be able to do this and it's not comfortable, but you really shouldn't accept that. That's not good enough, right? You want to be able to do it and it's like nothing and it feels easy.
Old maid fire.
So like what I love about both Gene and Codfish is that so this is like a very simple thing, right? Like that he's doing. But what he's doing that makes it kind of special is in the details. The way he goes, right? That's actually a little bit of a change from what we usually see with beatbox singing. Like I talked about with Gene, right? We usually see people back off and become very quiet. But because he's cracking and kind of just like throwing it out, if you were to hold that doesn't go well, right? That's not a good feeling. What he's doing is what we talk about with Gene when he was singing, what Gene tried to avoid is actually what is happening here. But it works because he doesn't sustain it. So he's letting the false folds come in. He's letting that pressure come in. And he just tosses it and leaves it very quickly. And that's why it sounds really cool and kind of more epic than usually what we would get from this sort of like Butterscotch or Gene Shinozaki. So bad. But like, yeah, this is really cool. See, it's almost like a center two flat, but that's okay.
Old maid fire.
This is the other thing that makes someone a really good musician. Let's talk about where the beginning of this phrase is versus where the end of it is. Right? So this is second he makes that change, this is the start to a new phrase.
Maid fire.
That's a phrase, okay? And he's respecting the entirety of that phrase, right? I think a lot of beatboxers they don't keep the arc of the phrase in mind, which is understandable for such a percussion heavy bias genre. But the second you add singing in here, you have to keep in mind the phrasing. Right? Like there's an arc here. The other thing that's really cool to talk about here, look at how forward the tongue is. This is actually really important. See how his tongue is like right on the bottom of his teeth? When you're singing, that is way more ergonomic than bringing the tongue back, which is okay in throat bass, right? But the reason why this is this balance act, right? His throat bass is actually kind of light, right? It's almost like it's not even bassy, right? And that's because his tongue is actually more in a position that we would see more with singing. With throat bass, really deep stuff, we'd usually get this like, right? We get this kind of hollowness, and the tongue kind of makes this shape, rounds out everything. But that's really not when you go to singing. Oh, like it's just weird. It doesn't sound good. It's not easy, right? And so he's going for this like kind of like this in-between technique.
Hold me, firebender. Oh, don't you know that you're a dead man? Whoa, whoa, blood all over your left hand.
Nice.
Whoa, whoa, reputation crumble to a strand. Oh, not to worry, cause so weak in melody. Jam, jam.
This is just sick.
I look forward to the GBB. Whoa, whoa, seeing all the beatbox family. Whoa, whoa, let's all go and make history. Oh, in Switzerland, oh, with our friend Pepuni.
Right? So I really just want to talk about, like, again, the musical decision takes precedent, but because of the culture of beatboxing and everything being like heavy, like, you know, versus this versus that, we get to appreciate like these moments of like, hold on, check this out, right? And that's very unique to beatboxing, this hold on, check this out. And have everybody go like, oh, like it's celebrated. Whereas like if you do that with guitar, it's kind of douchey, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like a guitar is just like, check this out. And like, no one cares, bro. But because beatboxing has this versus culture, we get moments like this, and it's actually meaningful that someone can do this. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that this is, you know, this level of beatboxing, very new, very new. So when you are doing this sort of like, check this out, you're demonstrating that more can be done with beatboxing than has been done before. And it's really cool. And he's like, yeah, hold on. Yeah, he's like, hold on. That's hard.
I look forward to the GBB. Whoa, whoa, seeing all the beatbox family.
I just got to point out one more time. So one of the reasons, like when we talk about like, you know, the pressure building up,
the GBB.
When we talk about the pressure building up behind the lips and how that's counter for singing, notice how he's humming. Why does that matter? Because when you hum, two things happen. Sound goes through your nasal passage, which makes the consequences of excess breath almost negligible, right? It's way easier. You can even try this. Right? It's way easier when you can put that much air through your nose. It's like a release valve. I would bring up the diagram, but if you're more interested in the technical things, I made a video called The Science of Throat Bass. Anyway, there's that element of it where there's this release valve from using a consonant that's called a nasal continuant, MM, right? NM or NG. But the other element of this too is that when you sing and you have your lips closed, that will create a back pressure. And there's actually a scientist by the name of Ingo Titze that is like he made like an entire routine just on this concept alone, using straws, using humming. And so when you have that back pressure, it actually means you can put more pressure behind the voice as well, because that back pressure creates this equilibrium. So that's why, even though he's hitting so hard on these consonants, it's not affecting his voice in any negative way, because there's that back pressure.
I look forward to the GBB. Whoa, whoa, seeing all the beatbox family. Whoa, whoa, let's all go and make history. Oh, in Switzerland, oh, with our friend Peponi.
Just for those who don't know who Peponi is, because I had to Google this, because like every beatboxer was like, "Hey, Peponi, it's good, bruh." Peponi is the person behind Swiss Beatbox, which is a massive channel, and Peponi has made it basically his life's work to go around and help promote different beatboxers and help take it is hard. Beatboxing is not exactly mainstream yet. It's exploding in popularity, but only among a very, very young demographic. It's not usually seen as any sort of like legitimate art, which is bull, but that's why someone like Peponi coming along and really making it easier to put your name out there, giving bigger events, focusing on the marketing aspect and the asset generation, content marketing, so that beatboxers can beatbox. You know what I mean? Like it's really important that you know a little bit about marketing yourself, but it's super helpful whenever, and this happens all the time with like Spotify playlists and all that stuff. There are people who make it a point to make their favorite art be known, and that's Peponi for beatboxing in a big way, like the way a music label would do it. So just props to that guy for helping us. Because I mean, like, what world would we live in if these two performances weren't available? It'd be a worse world, objectively. Not as cool, but it is cool because we have performances like this. So, wonderful way to have my coffee.